Chapter 2. Diggory and his uncle. It was so sudden and so horrible, unlike anything that had ever happened to Diggory, even in a nightmare, that he let out a scream. Instantly, Uncle Andrew's hand was over his mouth.
None of that. If you start making noises, your mother will hear you. And you know what that'll do to her.
As Diggory said afterwards, the horrible meanness of getting at a chap in that way almost made him sick. But of course he didn't scream again.
That's better. Perhaps you could help it. It's a little shocking once you see your first person vanish. It gave me a shock when the guinea pig vanished the other night.
Was that when you yelled?
Oh, you heard that? Do you? I hope you haven't been spying on me.
No, I haven't. But what's happened to Polly?
Congratulate me, my dear boy,
said Uncle Andrew, rubbing his hands together.
My experiment has succeeded. The little girl has vanished out of our world.
What have you done to her?
Sent her, well, to another place.
What do you mean?
Uncle Andrew sat down and said,
Well, I'll tell you all about it. Have you heard of Mr. LeFay?
Wasn't that a great aunt or something?
Not exactly. She was my grandmother. That's her there on the wall.
Diggory looked and saw a faded photograph. It showed the face of an old woman in a bonnet. He could now remember what he had once seen in a photo of the same face in an old drawer at home, in the country. He asked his mother who it was, and Mother had not seemed to want to talk about the subject. It was not at all a nice face. Diggory thought, of course, with those early photographs, one could never really tell.
Wasn't there something wrong with her, Uncle Andrew?
Well, it depends on what you call wrong. People are so narrow-minded. She certainly got very queer in later life. Did very unwise things. That's why they shut her up.
In an asylum, do you mean?
Oh, no. Nothing of that sort. Only in prison.
I see. What has she done?
Ah, poor woman. She had been very unwise. There was a good many different things. We needed go into all that. She was always very kind to me.
But look here. What has all this got to do with Polly? I wish you'd...
All in good time, my boy. They let old Mrs. LeFay out before she died. I was one of the very few people whom she would allow to see her in her last illnesses. She had gotten to dislike ordinary, ignorant people. You understand. I do myself. But she and were interested in the same sort of thing. It was only a few days before her death that she told me to go to a bureau in her house and open a secret drawer and bring her a little box I would find there. The moment I picked up the box, I could tell by the pricking of my fingers that I held something great secret in my hands. She gave it to me and made me promise that as soon as she was dead, I would burn it upon the certain ceremonies. That promise I did not keep.
Well then, it was jolly rotten of you.
Rotten? Oh, I see. You mean that little boy ought to keep their promises. Very true. Most right and proper. I'm sure, and I'm very glad, you have been taught to do it. But, of course, you must understand that rules of sort, however excellent they may be for little boys and servants and women, and very people in general cannot possibly expect to apply it to profound students and great thinkers and sages. No, Diggory. Men like me who propose hidden wisdom are freed of common rules just as you were cut off from the common pleasures. Yours, my boy, is a high and lonely destiny.
Okay, ready? Let's try that again. As he said this, he sighed and looked so grave and noble and mysterious that for a second Diggory really thought he was saying something rather fine. But then he remembered the ugly look he had seen on Uncle Andrew's face the moment before Polly had vanished, and all at once he saw through Uncle Andrew's grand words.
All it means
He said to himself,
is that he thinks he can do anything he likes to get anything he wants.
Of course, I didn't dare to open the box for a long time, for I knew it might contain something highly dangerous, for my godmother was a very remarkable woman. The truth is, she was one of the last mortals in this country, who had fairy blood in her. She said there had been two others in her time. One was a duchess, and the other a chairwoman. In fact, Diggory, you are now taking the last man, possibly. You really had a fairy godmother. There, that'll be something for you to remember when you are an old man yourself.
I'll bet she was a bad fairy.
thought Diggory, and added out loud,
But what about Polly?
How you do harp on that.
as if that was what mattered.
First, my task, of course, to study the box itself. It was very ancient, and I knew enough, even then, to know that it wasn't Greek, or Old Egyptian, or Babylonian, or Hittite, or Chinese. It was older than any of those nations. That was a great day. When I found out the last truth, the box was Atlantean. It came from the lost island of Atlantis. That meant it was centuries older than any of those Stone Age things that they dug up in Europe. And it was a rough, crude thing, like them either. For in the very dawn of time, Atlanteans was really a great city, with places and temples and learned men.
He paused for a moment as if he expected Diggory to say something, but Diggory was disliking his uncle more every minute, so he said nothing.
Meanwhile, I was learning a good deal in other ways. It wouldn't be proper to explain them to a child about magic in general. That meant that it came to have a fair deed of sort. Of things might be in the box. By various tests I narrowed down the possibles. I had to get to know someone. Well, some devilish, queer people, and go through some very disagreeable procedures. And that was what turned my head gray. And doesn't become a magic for nothing. My health broke down in the end, but I got better. And at last I actually knew.
Although there was not really the least chance of anyone overhearing them, he leaned forward and almost whispered as he said, "Read it!" Okay. You're telling him a secret. Tell me a secret.
The Atlantean box contained something that had been brought from another world, when our world was just only beginning.
What?
asked Diggory, who was now interested in spite of himself.
Only dust. Fine dry dust. Nothing much to look at. Not much to show for a lifetime of toil. You might say, but when I looked at the dust, I took a jolly good care not to touch it, and thought that very grain had once been another world. I don't mean another planet. You know they were part of our world, and you could get to them if you went far enough. But a really other world, another nature, another universe, somewhere you would never reach, even if you traveled through space of this universe forever and ever. That world could only be reached by magic. Well,
Here Uncle Andrew rubbed his hands till his knuckles cracked like fireworks.
I knew that if only I could get it into the right form, that the dust would draw you back to the place it had come from. But the difficulty was getting the dust into the right form. My early experiments, were all failures. I tried them on guinea pigs. Some of them only died. Some exploded like bombs.
Well, that was a jolly cruel thing to do.
Said Diggory, who had once had a guinea pig of his own.
How do you keep getting off the point? That's what the creatures were for. I bought them myself. Let me see. Where was I? Ah, yes. At last, I succeeded in making the rings. The yellow rings. But now I knew difficulties arose. I was pretty sure now that the yellow ring would send any creature that touched it into another place. But what would they be? What would the good be of that if I couldn't get them back to tell me what they had found there?
And what about them? A nice mess they'd be if they couldn't get back.
You'll keep on looking at everything for the wrong point of view. What the importance is, can't you understand that the thing is a great experiment? The whole point of sending anyone to the other place is that I would find out what it is like.
Well, why didn't you go yourself?
Diggory had hardly ever seen anyone look so surprised and offended as his uncle did at this simple question.
Me? Me? The boy must be mad. A man at my time of life, in my state of health, to risk the shock and dangers of being flooded suddenly into another universe? Have you ever heard of something so preposterous in my life? Do you realize what you're saying? Think another world means what you might meet. Anything.
And I suppose you've sent Polly into it then. And all I can say, even if you are my uncle, is that you've behaved like a coward, sending a girl into a place you're afraid to go into yourself.
Silence, sir! Don't care!
We hope he eats you! Go away!
Alright, let me turn the page.
Turns the page!
Ready?
Blast the cap.
I called the button.
I'm waiting for the thing to go away, Micah. Shut up.
The magician. The adept. What is that?
Adept.
The adept?
Adept. Mm-hmm.
Who is doing that the experiment?
The adept who is doing the experiment. It's like he's adapting to the experiment. Ready? Ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Micah, I'm saying ready for your sake because you're swinging stuff and clanging it. About.
I will not be talked to like that by a little dirty schoolboy. You don't understand. I am a great scholar, a magician. The adept. Who is doing the experiment? Of course, I need a subject to do it on. Bless my soul. Next you'll be telling me that I ought to ask the guinea pigs permission before I use them.
I want to hit you so bad.
No great wisdom can be reached without sacrifice, but the idea of me going myself is ridiculous. It's like asking a general to fight a common soldier's battle. Supposing I got killed, what would become of my life's work?
Oh, do stop jawing! Are you going to bring her back?
I was going to tell you, when you so rudely interrupted me, that it was last found out of doing the return journey. The green rings draw you back.
But Polly hasn't got a green ring.
No!
Then she can't get back, and it's exactly the same as if you'd murdered her.
She can get back if someone else will go after her wearing a yellow ring himself and take 2 green rings, one to bring himself back and one to bring her back.
And of course Diggory saw the trap in which he was caught, and he stared at Uncle Andrew, saying nothing, with his mouth wide open. His cheeks had gone very pale.
Micah, I might have to make you leave.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, where am I? Okay.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. I hope, Diggory, you are not given to show the white feather, I should be very sorry to think that anyone of your family had not had enough honor and chivalry to go to an aid of a lady in distress.
Oh, shut up! If you had honor at all, you'd be going yourself. But I know you won't. All right.
Boy
Without
voice.
knowing.
Just use your regular voice.
Just say, without knowing, and then I'd have to go after her. Make
And
it
can
fit
you please use your
words.
regular voice?
If I mess up and I know that I can fix it, I just make it fit
Yeah,
my
just keep
regular
going.
words.
Ready?
And just leave out a few words.
Ready?
It's not that bad.
I see I've got to go myself. But you are a beast. I suppose you planned the whole thing. So she would go without knowing it. Then I'd have to go after her.
Of course.
Very well, I'll go after her. But there's one thing I jolly well mean to say. I didn't believe in magic until today, and now it's real. Alright, well if it is, I suppose all fairy tales are more or less true. And you're simply a cruel magician like the ones in the stories. Well, I've never read a story in which people of that sort aren't paid out in the end. I bet you will be, and serve you right.
Okay, ready?
And
Good, do
serve
it.
you right, not and serve you right.
Okay, ready? It's fine if he says either. Ready?
And go. And well, if it is, I suppose all old fairy tales are more or less true, and you're simply a wicked, cruel magician, like the ones in the stories. Well, I've never read a story in which the people of sort aren't paid out in the end, and I'll bet you'll be, and it'll serve you right.
Ready?
Of all the things Diggory had said, this was the first that really went home. Uncle Andrew started, and there came over his face a look of such horror that, beast though he was, you could almost feel sorry for him. But a second later he soothed it all away.
Ha ha ha. Well, I suppose that it's natural for a child to think, brought up among women as you have been. Old wives' tales. I don't think you need worry about my danger, Diggory. I won't be better to worry about the danger of your little friend. She's gone some time. If you're any dangers over there, well, it would be a pity to arrive a moment too late.
Why, you care, but I'm sick of this job. What have I got to do?
You must really learn to control your temper, my boy. Otherwise, you'll grow up to be like your Aunt Lizzie. Now, attend to me.
He got up, put on a pair of gloves, and walked over to the tray that contained the rings.
They only work if they're actually touching your skin. Wearing gloves, I can pick them up, like this, and nothing perhaps. If you carry one in your pocket, nothing would happen. But of course, you'd have to be careful not to put your hand in your pocket and touch it by accident. The moment you touch the yellow ring, you vanish out of this world. Then you are in another place. I expect, of course, that hasn't been tested yet, but I expect that the moment you touch the green ring, you vanish out of this world, and I expect reappear in this. Now I take these 2 green rings and drop them in your right hand pocket. Remember very carefully which pocket the green rings are in. G for green and R for right. GR. You see which are the first 2 letters of green. One of you and one for the little girl. And now you pick up a yellow one for yourself. I should put it in and on your finger. If I wear you, there'll be less chance of you dropping it.
Diggory had almost picked up the yellow ring when he suddenly checked himself.
Look here, what about Mother? Supposing she asks where I am?
The sooner you go, the sooner you'll be back.
But you don't really know whether I can get back.
Uncle Andrew shrugged his shoulders, walked across to the door, unlocked it, threw it open, and said,
Oh, very well, then. Just as you please. Go down and have your dinner leave the little girl to be eaten by wild animals, or drown or starved in other world, or lost there for good. If that's what you prefer, it's all one to me. Perhaps before tea time you'll better drop in on Mrs. Plummer and explain that she'll never see her daughter again because you're afraid to put a ring on.
By gum! Don't I just wish I had a big enough hand to punch your head!
Then he buttoned up his coat, took a deep breath, and picked up the ring. He thought then, as he always thought afterwards too, that he could not decently have done anything else.